Hello, my name is Basile Baudez, and I am an assistant professor of architectural history in the Art and Archaeology department at Princeton. Today, I want to present a new book project that takes us to the margins of architectural history and that interrogates the way we think of public urban spaces as a part of the commons, a shared resource in which each stakeholder, individual citizens and public managers, have an interest. Last December, a New York restaurant was criticized on social media over its outdoor dining setup. They had built a tent that swallowed up the sidewalk outside the eatery, creating a covered passage that forced people to walk through the structure to get by. A traffic sign on the tent even instructed pedestrians to enter through a door-sized opening to get to the other side, with no room to walk around, other than the street itself. We all have heard of the tensions resulting from the licenses given to restaurants by municipal authorities to set up temporary outside seating during the pandemic months. In a dense and overcrowded streetscape, cyclists lost a lane, sidewalks became narrower. But on the other side, New Yorkers felt a sense of liberation and joy at being able to reclaim public spaces and leave their apartments while restaurant owners and employees could earn their living. What interests me here is that the space of conflict between the different stakeholders on the sidewalk is delimited by a piece of architecture made of fabric. And the features of that material, ephemerality, availability, easiness of setting, reversibility, cheapness, connected to other textile elements in the city that speak out about dialogues between public and private domains. The same way one expresses their opinion, support, or belief by raising a flag outside their window, wears a certain outfit in the street, or when an awning outside an apartment building transforms the sidewalk that it covers into a semi-private space. As an architectural historian interested in the history of representations, and a specialist of early modern Europe, I wanted to test this reading to a city where this dialogue is the most visible, the city-state of Venice. So why Venice? As the most densely populated city in Europe, Venice has developed a network of narrow streets that have been mostly replaced by waterways as transportation thoroughfares. This has a consequences that has seldom been noticed. One doesn't stop on a movable surface, such as a canal. No gathering is really possible. No temporary structures can be erected in order to sell food or goods. Therefore, all the urban functions, generally divided between different types of empty spaces in a normal city, are largely concentrated in the squares. And there is one square that is particularly important, the largest of the city, the center of its religious, political, and cultural power, the one devoted to the patron saint of the Republic, Saint Mark. This is where I would like to focus today. We are speaking here of one of the most celebrated and reproduced cityscapes in the world since the 18th century, when it embodied the genre of the veduta, the city view. In Constable and Link's Catalogue Raisonné of Canaletto, for example, we count no less than 76 surviving paintings devoted to the square, without counting the massive production of prints that serves as models or numerous other paintings or copies. Until now, scholarship on these objects has mostly focused on questions of dating, made possible by our knowledge of architectural changes that occurred during the century, on questions of perspective and light, and histories of collecting and seriality. Besides the rendering of the buildings and the construction of a perspectival convincing space that allowed the owner of the painting to recollect or enjoy one of the most famous cityscapes in the world, I believe that there are details added by the artist that reveal more than just the will to animate the picture plane. Let's compare our painting with a contemporary print of the square. As we can see, very few elements of life have been added to the rendering of the architecture. transforming the cityscape into a lifeless theater stage. View painting, on the other hand, introduces life on and deep inside the stage, and that life is expressed by textile elements. Washing hanging from the windows, awnings on the facade or on poles encroaching on the square itself, human figures reduced to the variety of their garments, but also sellers' stalls at the foot of the campanile or around the three flagstaffs. By focusing on these details, I propose to read them as revelators of the existing tensions of a public space among different stakeholders. In this short presentation, I wish to argue that the study of the presence of textile in urban settings allow us to identify the tensions resulting from the state's attempts to spatially restrict and control the life of the city dwellers. So what are the markers of these attempts at controlling space? This painting by Antonio Diziani shows us two recurrent but time-limited and dynamic ways the Republic used textile to take possession of shared public space. First, the Republic's official religious procession, for which a textile canopy snakes around the entirety of the surface of the square. The second marker is a series of ensigns of Venice. These magnificent flags, made of painted and gilt silk, are here exceptionally raised on the three masts erected in the 14th century in order to identify the island with its ships. The placement of the poles is of utmost importance, and Giorgio Bellavitis has convincingly interpreted them as an external iconostasis for the basilica, marking the sacred space of the basilica itself and the regal power of the Doge, its prince, ultimately leaving the rest of the square to the citizens. The third dynamic use of textile as space markers are the garments themselves. Venice has a long tradition of producing costume books, and visitors all marveled at the elegance and specificity of the Venetian dress. More than anywhere in 18th century Europe, the Republic kept producing strict sumptuary laws that were proclaimed on St. Mark's Square and posted on every church's door. The authorities wanted to preserve Republican virtue by avoiding emulation and rivalry. As one politician wrote, "Alter the dress and everything is transformed, even liberty itself, into arbitrariness and disorder." Ranks had to be kept visible, especially in a city where the elite was told to keep their wealth private in the name of Republican equality. The state inquisitor's agents kept reporting in painful details the dress infractions of the nobles, of the prostitutes, and of the Jewish population. On view paintings, the scale of the figures gives the dresses a semiotic importance beyond any other genre. As Goethe noticed, everything the Venetian wore has its meaning. On Diziani's painting, the Doge is easily recognized by his golden dress, the senators in red, the councillors in black, all wearing the toga, a large mantle that multiple laws tried to make mandatory for any official to wear near St. Mark's Place. But as we saw, textiles are also used by painters to mark the city life that tries to escape the authorities' control. These two paintings, made in 1723 by Canaletto, show on the left one, in a seemingly awkward manner, the staff emerging from the body of the procurator of St. Mark, one of the three officials in charge of the basilica and of the square, while the pendant painting show him pointing towards a makeshift tensile structure, while several men are idly resting, having even laid a rug on the step of the sacred column of San Teodoro, the first patron of the city-state. Because the vedute painting genre aims to offer their viewers a recollection of a lived city, painters multiply the indication of that life by textile elements. The square is indeed inhabited. The two buildings that create its borders are composed of residential apartments. That is shown by the curtains flowing, the awning sprawling out the windows, and even the washing hanging on the facades, interrupting the majestic theatre set designed by the Republic. The ordinance is even disturbed by the inclusion of liagi, these wooden and glass boxes that play the role of the North African musharabieh and allow its occupants to see without being seen. The square is also a shopping center. Under the arcades and around its vertical isolated markers, the campanile and the staffs. The first ones appear on the painting only as they expand on the square itself, and the second ones seem to overflow from their reserved spaces around the campanile and the staffs onto the shared ground of the square, despite the numerous decrees that try to delimit the plots given to these informal and ephemeral stands. To conclude this talk, I would like to end with an object that embodies the complex relationship of public control and private freedom that textile elements help us to uncover. This key sign is found on that many details of Canaleto's paintings and Guardi's paintings, and has become the contemporary symbol of Venice. It is the mask. Imposed by the authorities to respect decency in times of carnival and in places of gambling, the mask and the apparatus that conceal the body are used by Venetians to escape the constant surveillance of the state, notably in their relations with foreigners. A black tricorn, a mask called the volto or lava, made of white waxed cloth in a shape that permitted unimpeded breathing, eating and drinking, a black mail made of silk and lace, known as the bauta, and a cloak called the tabarro. The bauta conceals the gender, the age, class, rank, identity of the wearer, establishing their incognito. As James Johnson has convincingly argued, it allows the preservation of privacy and freedom from performing the social rituals that are expected from members of the patrician class. The importance of the mask in Venetian culture reveals the fact that it allows to protect one's privacy in public space, confronted not only to the intrusion of the state, but also of the judgments of a small, tight, and extremely dense urban community. By looking anew and in detail at these images that are still constantly present in our imagination, I hope to rethink soft architecture as a space of competition over shared urban space. Here, textile elements that are seen in an urban context help to blur the rigid boundaries between private and public space that our modern societies are still eager to establish.